All right, everyone, it is 10 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. Good morning, I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's Office Manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Introduction to DPLA and SSDN, and today's presenter, Kayla Zayas-Ruiz. Kayla Zayas-Ruiz is the Sunshine State Digital Network Coordinator and has multiple years of digital collections experience. She manages the day-to-day activities of the network and provides training and outreach to cultural heritage institutions throughout the state of Florida. Kayla received her MLIS from Florida State University in 2013. Please welcome Kayla and enjoy her webinar this morning. Kayla?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So to get started, let's first talk about what is DPLA. So DPLA is a free online library, and that provides access to over 21 million books, photographs, maps, audiovisual materials, and even a wider variety of materials from libraries and archives around the United States. That number is actually inaccurate. As of this week, it's now over 22 million items, so it is growing very quickly, and new content is added every day to their site. So how does content get into DPLA? Content gets into DPLA from two different types of hubs. The first is content hubs. These are large libraries and museums, standalone institutions that have enough content to provide over 150,000 unique records to DPLA. And the second type of hub is a service hub. And service hubs are state or regional collaborations that aggregate metadata from partner institutions in their area and send that up to DPLA. So here are some examples of some of the content hubs that provide content to DPLA on their own. Currently, there are 15 different content hubs, and one new one is in progress to be added soon this year. And then some of the service hubs can be seen here. There are currently 24 service hubs and 7 in progress. So 7 will be added in the coming year. Some of them are for individual states like us. We serve the state of Florida, but others like the Plains to Peaks Collective serve multiple states. They serve Montana and the Dakotas. So some of them are just for individual states, and some of them serve a larger area where there might not be as many institutions present. So how do you use DPLA? There's definitely multiple ways that you can use DPLA for your patrons or for your own research. So they do provide educational resources. They provide resources for family research and genealogists. They are also good for people who are interested in just continuing to do research on their own for their own interests. And they are also really good research for scholars and academic researchers. So they do provide user guides for each one of these different types of services that they offer. And they're pretty comprehensive, and they show you how to make the most of the resources they provide for each type of research that you might be conducting on their site. So one of the main resources that DPLA provides is their exhibitions. There are currently 32 exhibitions on their site, and these are designed to tell stories with the collective content that they have on their site for a broad audience. So DPLA and its partners have curated a series of virtual exhibitions, and they highlight specific themes such as American imperialism, prohibition, the Transcontinental Railroad, World War II, the home front, so lots of different topics. And these curated exhibitions include full images, documents, and other media from the collections contributed to DPLA, and detailed information about these individual topics. Currently, exhibitions are created by DPLA staff, DPLA partner institutions and graduate students in library and information science and public history programs around the country. Another resource that is provided by DPLA are primary source sets. And primary source sets are essentially highlight reels for different topics as well in DPLA. These are curated for use in education between grades 6 through 12 and the first couple of years of college. And they are curated by secondary and collegiate educators around the country. And there's over 100 topics represented in these DPLA primary source sets. This is what they look like. They are designed to help students develop critical thinking skills by exploring different topics in history and literature. So each set of primary sources includes a topic overview, 10 to 15 primary resources, and links to related resources, as well as a teaching guide. So it provides discussion questions and different things like that that teachers can use in their classroom geared towards different age groups. Currently, they are curated by the Education Advisory Committee, and the Education Advisory Committee is selected from a pool of applicants. There are currently 16 members on the Education Advisory Committee, and the efforts are funded by the Whiting Foundation and the Teagle Foundation. So these are a really good resource for teachers or librarians who are wanting to teach students about how to find primary resources and how to analyze and use primary resources in their work. So that's a really great resource for anyone out there looking for something that's already curated for them. And one of the final resources that they, curated resources that they provide are the Browse by Topic feature. This is a new feature added during the 2018 website redesign. DPLA released a new website back in March of 2018, and this was one of the new features that they added. So these are curated topics selected from items in DPLA's collections. So they feature the breadth and variety of DPLA's collections without having to do a keyword search, and they do plan to add more topics in the future. So similar to the exhibits and the primary resource sets, but with less additional content added to them. So it's more like a list of different things within their collection rather than having curated questions or lesson plans associated with them. But it does help make finding some of these topics a little bit easier than just doing a broad search. Another thing that DPLA works towards is their ebooks projects. They currently contribute to 2 different ebooks projects. One of them is the Open eBooks. It's an app that contains thousands of popular and award-winning titles that are free for kids that live in in-need communities. So they currently partner with the Open eBooks initiative with the New York Public Library, First Book, and the educational technology company called Clever. This content is supported by Baker and Taylor. And to learn more about their Open eBooks project, you can visit openebooks.net. So again, that is for students that live in in-need communities to provide them with some ebooks, access to ebooks. The second ebooks project that they contribute is the DPLA Exchange, and it's a marketplace that's aimed at improving libraries' access to a broader selection of open and licensed ebooks. So that one you can view on the DPLA website. And then in addition to that, they are also working to facilitate ongoing and in-depth discussions about ebooks and their future with partners such as the Readers First, the ASCLA Consortial eBook Interest Group, and ALA's Digital Content Working Group. So those are continuing conversations that they have with those organizations about the future of ebooks and the state of the format that ebooks are being provided. They also support the New York Public Library's work towards a national digital platform that allows libraries to control the e-content experience. It's called Simply E and that is for consortia to be able to control their ebooks platforms a little bit better. So then some of the stuff that they're working towards in regards to ebooks, they're having some programs at ALA, if you're attending that, related to their ebooks projects. So check out the ALA scheduler for more information about some of those sessions that they'll be offering. So in addition to being an open portal for students, teachers, and scholars, DPLA is also a powerful platform that enables new and transformative uses for digitized cultural heritage. So they offer an API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, and that provides open access to their metadata that can be used by software developers, researchers, and others to create novel environments for learning, tools for discovery, and engaging apps. So through the API, developers from different backgrounds can build tools, widgets, plugins, and a lot of really interesting things that use the content submitted to DPLA. So for those of you who are not familiar with an API can be described as a set of routines, protocols, and digital tools for building software applications. It allows for computers to talk to each other. So it is a software-to-software interface and not a user interface. So an API, it makes it easier for a developer to create an application that makes use of a particular set or sets of data. So that is made available by DPLA for people to create apps. They do have an app library that was included in their previous website. They're currently working on adding the app library back into their new website, but here are some examples of some apps that people have created using the open API provided by DPLA. So there's a color browse app, so you can download this app and search for content that's in a specific color. So for example, here someone searched for the color red and they found resources that are in red. I'm not really sure how useful that is for people, unless maybe you're trying to make a collage or something. But that's a really interesting app that was created using the API. Another one is the Browse by County app, which allows users to dial deeper into specific geographic areas in counties. So you can see what content is available. For example, this is searching in Pennsylvania counties. So it shows that there are over 83,000 records in this geographic area, related to this geographic area. And as you zoom in closer, you can see what content is specifically related to those areas. So for example, if there's like voter records or photographs from events or something like that in a specific geographic area, this app allows you to search using a map rather than keyword searches. And this one is the culture collage. This allows you to search for a specific topic, and it creates a collage of content from DPLA, from thumbnails provided to DPLA related to that topic. So this collage is related to baseball items. And as you can see, there's lots of photographs, but there's also some sheet music and some text resources related to baseball that show up in this collage. So those are some interesting resources that people have created around the DPLA API, which some can be more useful than others, but they're fun. It might be a good way to encourage students to create things since they'll have access to freely available data. So if you have a coding club or something like that in your library or in your school, the DPLA API provides a base of content that a student can build an app around without having to curate their own content. So it is an interesting way to take a look at that. It's also really good for digital humanities projects and things like that at your institution if researchers are looking for an additional resource that pulls various institutions' content together. So what are some of the benefits of having DPLA in Florida? So some of the benefits include that our content is exposed to a much wider audience. So rather than someone having to search our individual institutions' digital collections, they can just go to DPLA and find our content in one place. It increases the discovery and use of our collections in that way, and it also places our content in a national context. So rather than just finding things that FSU has related to civil rights, someone can do a search for civil rights in DPLA and find our content along with the content of other people who have civil rights collections, and puts them all together so that it tells a better story and puts all of our materials in context with the national narrative. So that's a good way, that's a really great benefit of participating in DPLA. It also provides us the opportunity to create new partnerships around the state of Florida. We're already making great strides in collaboration around the state with some of our efforts, and it's really great to see people working together for digital cultural heritage materials around the state. And also the DPLA API allows for our content to be used in creative ways using the API that DPLA provides with our metadata available to anyone to use. Does anyone have any questions about DPLA before I move on to SSDN? No? Okay. So that brings us to what is SSDN. So SSDN stands for the Sunshine State Digital Network, and it is the DPLA service hub for the state of Florida. So we do serve all institutions within the state of Florida that have digital collections or are interested in creating digital collections to share with DPLA. It involved multiple planning partners to get the application submitted to DPLA, including Florida State University, Florida Gulf Coast University, FLBC, UCF, University of Miami, FIU, UF, USF, the New College of Florida, as well as the Division of Library and Information Services. These institutions work together for 3 years to get an application together to submit to DPLA for us to get a service hub in Florida. 3 initial partners included in that planning process decided to be the implementing partners and lead the implementation of DPLA in Florida. Those are Florida State University, the University of Miami, and Florida International University. And we were the first 3 institutions to submit content to DPLA back in November of 2017. And we're working on growing the network and creating resources for people to be able to join the network and submit content to DPLA through the hub. One really important thing to note is that not just these 3 partners, but multiple partners around the state were really instrumental in the implementation of DPLA in Florida. For example, the Division of Library and Information Services did provide funding for our membership to the DPLA member network, which allows certain benefits that I'll talk about in a little bit. So how does the structure of SSDN work? So this is a graphic that kind of illustrates a little bit about our structure. So we do operate on a sub-hub structure, which allows us to divide the work a little bit more around the state, so it's not contingent on one institution to get everything ready. Right now, the institution that is serving as the primary hub is Florida State University. We're the administrative head, so we manage all of the funds as well as the feed directly to DPLA and the communication between DPLA and our content providers. So as you can see in this graphic, we don't have this many sub-hubs yet. We just have one sub-hub in South Florida. But they take content from different contributors, such as their local public library or museum, and help them remediate their metadata, and then they package all of that together from all of their content contributors and from their content and send it on to the hub. And then the hub takes their content and packages it along with additional contributor content and sends that to DPLA all together, so that DPLA only has to deal with one data set rather than hundreds of data sets coming from one state. So in the future, we plan to add more sub-hubs and obviously more content contributors so that we can continue growing content in DPLA from the state of Florida. So this is the way that the main hub is structured right now. We are currently taking content from Florida Memory, which is a very large, very rich collection of photographs and documents that come from the state library and archives. And they have over 300,000 digital objects, which is really great. So we're currently working with them to get their content into DPLA. We also provide our content and content from community-hosted projects that we work with. So, for example, the local high school, we host their yearbooks. So that content is being provided to DPLA as well. And then we take the content from the Miami sub-hub and provide that to DPLA as well in that one package. And so for our South Florida hub right now, this is how they're currently structured. So the Miami hub is currently a partnership between Florida International University and the University of Miami. Florida International University does a lot to foster the relationships in their community and help create those additional partnerships. They do a lot of outreach down there, and they also have quite a few hosted collections that they have for their community partners. So they help remediate that metadata before they send it to the University of Miami. And the University of Miami packages FIU's data and their data, as well as the data of partners that are not hosted by FIU, and they send that information to FSU for the harvest that goes to DPLA. Does all of that make sense to everybody? Does anyone have questions about that structure? So some of the goals of the network for 2018 are to continue building the network. So we have established a steering committee is newly formed, and that is comprised of leaders around the state who can speak to the digital collections landscape in their area and help provide guidance for the network for sustainability and growth as we move forward. So that is one of our goals. The steering committee will be meeting next month to begin some of that guiding planning that we hope to establish as we move forward. We also hope to incorporate 5 new content partners this year. We've already got 3 new partnership agreements signed, and some new content from those partners will be available in DPLA for our August harvest, which is really exciting. So we're already more than halfway to our 5 content partner goal for this year. We're hoping to identify partners for 2019. We have already started that process, and we have a lot of interest for people who are interested in contributing content starting next year. And we also would like to have 100,000 new objects in DPLA by the end of this year. So I'm happy to say that we're already halfway there to that 100,000 new object mark. We've added 50,000 new objects already, or I'm sorry, 74,000 new objects already this year, which is really exciting. And we'd also like to have more people around the state talking about the Sunshine State Digital Network and how to contribute to that, not only through content, but through the use of DPLA. We want to spread the word about the resources that DPLA provides. And we'd also, another goal is to provide guidelines and additional training for potential partners and for existing partners to follow. And our metadata guidelines should be coming out in July as well. And we're really excited about the progress we've made there to help people understand what format their metadata needs to be in and how to make their how to enrich their metadata so that it's usable for DPLA. So what have we done so far? So first, we became a real thing. Our application did take 3 years to submit, and it took an additional year to set up the infrastructure to be able to send metadata to DPLA in an effective way. So we were able to have our first harvest back in November of 2017, where we submitted about 70,000 digital metadata records to DPLA. We're up to 148,000 records now, so that's really great. We were awarded a Knight Foundation grant to support our startup activities, which has helped us provide workshops around the state of Florida. We did 4 workshops last fall in Orlando, Miami, Fort Myers, and Tallahassee, and we're hoping to do a couple more this year with that grant funding. We were able to set up our initial network infrastructure. Again, that took a year of planning and implementation to be able to get from acceptance to harvest. So that is a great achievement for us. FSU was able to hire me, the network coordinator, which was a great help. I'm the only full-time employee dedicated to the operation of the network. Everyone else that participates in SSDN right now is volunteering a portion of their time. So it's a great endeavor for FSU to be able to provide a full-time employee dedicated to this project. We were also able to join the DPLA member network thanks to the support from the Division of Library and Information Services. The DPLA member network allows us representation in DPLA governance at the national level, so we're able to participate in decisions that DPLA makes about the next steps for content and the next steps for their technical infrastructure and things like that that are really important to the future of that service. So we're able to have a seat at the table due to that membership. We held those 4 statewide workshops, and we also formed 3 new working groups related to metadata outreach and training. And those working groups are working really hard to get information out there about the network and to provide effective training for potential contributors and for users of DPLA as well. So as I said before, we went live in November of last year. It was 74,000 records. In 3 months' time, in 4 months' time, we were able to add over 20,000 new records with the inclusion of Florida Memory as a new partner. And our most recent harvest in May brought us up to 148,000 records are available in DPLA from 5 different content partners. So we were able to double the content that we provided to DPLA in our first 6 months of operation, which is just amazing and really great that more Florida content is being represented at that national level. So some basic information about contributing metadata to DPLA. Some initial things that you need to take into consideration. Your system needs to have an OAI PMH endpoint for us to be able to harvest your metadata. Metadata has to describe an available digital object. So the digital object needs to be freely available to the public and not have any restrictions on it for people to be able to view. And the metadata that you submit has to have 4 things. You have to have a title, you have to have a thumbnail, you have to have a link to that digital object, and you have to have a rights statement. But we really hope that you have more than that in order to make that object as useful to users as possible. And a final thing that you need to take into consideration when contributing metadata is that your metadata must be made available under a CC0 public domain declaration, which allows for its use in that open API. So anyone can use your metadata in things like their apps that they're creating using that API. So what is shareable metadata? So shareable metadata is quality metadata. It promotes search interoperability, so the ability to perform a search over a diverse set of metadata records so that you can get meaningful results from that search. It should be understandable outside of its local context and useful outside of its local context. And it should also preferably be machine processable as well. Since they do have so many records, they have to be able to process those in an efficient manner. So what does this mean exactly? Shareable metadata can be broken down into these 4 components. Content, coherence and context, consistency, and conformance to standards. So we'll talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail. So when it comes to content in your metadata records, this literally means what actually goes into the fields, how they're structured, and what vocabularies you're using, and the granularity of your description. So you have to think about how elements, values are structured, and how those affect whether the record is shareable. So for your institution, the resource and the defined audience should be appropriate. So you should be choosing appropriate vocabularies, content standards, appropriate granularity, a version of the resource as it's described, select elements to use. Don't include empty elements in records that you share, and repeating elements instead of packing multiple values into one field. So, for example, when you're using subjects in a field, instead of putting multiple subjects in one field, repeating the subject field so that you're not packing a field with multiple values. Okay. So the next basic area for such shareable metadata is coherence and context. So a shareable metadata record should make sense outside of its institution. So it should make sense out of its local context, and there should be enough information in the record for it to be able to stand on its own. So DPLA does require a thumbnail, but some other systems using the metadata submitted might not have that thumbnail or any reference to that digital object. So the record should be able to stand on its own and should make sense on its own without that digital representation of the object. It should also make sense to machines. You should be placing values in their appropriate elements, so not putting a scan date in the creation date field, for example. You should avoid local jargon and abbreviations because that can be confusing to a user, especially if they're just looking at that one object. They don't know it's part of the shop collection or something like that. No one knows what that means outside of your institution. And you should avoid including information that is really technical or administrative. So while it might be really important for us to know what DPI that was scanned at, it's not necessarily relevant to the user and shouldn't be shared with in the larger context of DPLA. And you should make sure that mappings from local to shared metadata formats result in coherent results. So again, making sure that you're putting the right information in the right fields and that it makes sense outside of your institution. So that when someone is searching for it in a larger platform, the result makes sense to them. And consistency. Consistency is, I think, the most important thing that you should remember. As I said before, you can do something wrong 1,000 times, but as long as you do it wrong the same way each time, it's going to be a lot easier to fix than if you do it wrong 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different times. When it comes to consistency, I would say that copy-paste is your friend, because even if your copy-paste is misspelled, it's going to be misspelled the same way every time. So you can go back and fix that very easily in your metadata. So remember copy-paste and remember consistency are really, really important when it comes to being able to correct records, and particularly in an aggregated context. So you want to pay special attention to how you're using your metadata records, which vocabularies you're using, and the syntax that you're using. So as long as you're being consistent, you should be able to correct things, and it will make more sense to users when you're using consistent vocabularies and consistent formats throughout your records. It also helps in the national context, because if we're all using the same types of vocabularies and things like that, it'll be more consistent across institutions as well. So that's where conformance to standards really comes into play. If you're conforming to standards in a consistent manner, then it's easier for users to be able to do searches and things like that related to specific subjects and topics that they're looking for. So using vocabulary and encoding standards, using content standards, and following technical standards. So sharing protocols like OEI-PMH help us be consistent with our sharing protocols. XML encoding helps us be consistent with our metadata records that we're sharing with each other. Trying to avoid using like HTML or CSS in your XML records and things like that. So just following technical conformance and vocabulary and encoding standards is really important when it comes to shareable quality, shareable metadata. So we're going to cover some specific fields that you might want to pay attention to, and how to comply with some of the things we've just talked about with specific fields. So titles. Titles is a really important one when it comes to DPLA because it's one of the required fields. So you really do need a title. So titles you think can be pretty straightforward, but it's not always as straightforward as people might think. So for example, I've seen museum collections where there's no title given to an art piece or to an artifact. And that would make it a lot harder for people to identify what it is. And titles are also where you may want to think twice about certain library standards that are not necessarily useful outside of the library context, like adding brackets to a title, or even making something, titling something unknown or untitled. So for example, I've done a search in DPLA for untitled, and over 77,000 objects come up. And while DPLA did accept these objects, them being untitled is not very useful to the user. So you have to think about how the user is going to do searches and how they're going to interpret the information that's provided by you. So while the object might not have a title, providing a concise and descriptive title is very helpful to the user. No one's going to be searching for untitled unless you're me, and you're wanting to see how many people have done that. So you really want to be careful with your titles and how you're describing your objects in the title. So a title is very, very important. So you want to conform to standards such as RDA or DAX, and you want to avoid unnecessary punctuation, again, like brackets, periods, and quotation marks, because those do affect how those search results come up when a user is doing a search. Dates is another really important field to take into consideration. Dates allow for faceting and narrowing down of results. And even though it's not a required field by DPLA, most of us have dates available for our objects, and they really enrich the experience and the ability for the system to find relevant information for the user. So if more than one date is used in your local system, for example, the digitization date or the acquisition date and the creation date, you should really only be providing the creation date for the resource, because that's what people are going to be looking for. If it's a photo from 1944 and it's related to World War II, the user is not going to care that it was digitized in 2008 or 2012. All they care about is that it was created in 1944. And you want to avoid, again, using placeholder values like unknown or no date, because, again, that's not useful information for the user. So if you don't know the date of the object, you should leave the field blank, because that is better than providing a placeholder value that really doesn't add any value to that record. So this is an example of dates from an aggregation provided to DPLA. These are dates provided from a single institution to DPLA in an aggregation. And as you can see here, this is where consistency really comes into play. There's different formats here. There's unnecessary punctuation. There's unnecessary characters. And there's also a scan. There's technical metadata in here. It has a scan and process date, which is not helpful to the user because that's not going to help them find a relevant resource related to a particular time period. So instead of question marks or things like that, or instead of providing every single year in the 1920s, providing a date range, or providing like a standardized date format like 10/1/1991 or November 1908, avoiding things like CA and circa C. Those are things that you don't really need to provide. So just being consistent with dates and how you're using that field and how you're representing the information in that field is really important when it comes to an aggregation. Some of this is not going to be machine readable, and when you use standards, that does make it a lot easier for processing and remediation of your metadata. So this is a really good example of where consistency is important and where conformance to standards is important, just as an example. Another really important thing to think about is your subject headings. So you should be using controlled controlled vocabularies and subject terms whenever possible. And if a controlled vocabulary is not available for the content that you're cataloging, creating your own controlled vocabulary locally and being consistent in the use of that language is going to be really important, so that someone knows to search for that specific thing. So they found something related to botany or something like that, and they know to look for that term in the future. So being consistent in the use of your vocabularies is going to be really important for subject headings. You should only include subjects that are relevant to the specific item, so avoiding using blanket subject headings for a collection, because not every item in that collection might be related to Disney, for example. But if it's in your Disney collection or in a collection related to Central Florida, you don't want to use a blanket subject heading, because then users are going to get irrelevant results in their search. And then using multiple subject fields for your subject headings rather than packing them into one field. Or if you are not able to use multiple fields, for repeat fields in your system, separating those with a semicolon so that it's discernible to the user that that's a separate subject that you're describing with that particular object. Format is another one that can be confusing and misused field for a lot of people. So, for example, instead of, like, again, you want to think about the user's intent when it comes to this field. So, yeah, you've scanned a book, right? So technically, it would be accurate to describe that object as an image, because it is now an image of a book. But the user isn't searching for an image. The user is searching for a book, right? So you want to describe that as a text object, because that's what it is. Or that's what that is a representation of. So thinking about the user's intent when you're using this field instead of thinking about what the file format is going to be really important for this field, because it's also going to help users filter their results for relevant content. So if a user is looking for images about World War II, they can narrow it down to images. If they're looking for documents related to World War II, they can narrow that down by text objects, right? So using this field consistently and using it for the actual object rather than the digital representation of the object is going to be really important as well. This can be complex when multiple versions exist of an object, but again, really thinking about the user's intent in searching is going to be useful in informing how you describe the object in this field. Description is also going to be very important. Right now, DPLA does not index full text. They don't take the OCR file and include that. So a user is not going to be able to search the full text of an object. So being really intentional about the way that you're describing an object is going to be important for someone. This is why right now they're having issues with runs of newspapers or serials because they're not able to search using OCR or full text. A user can't search a full newspaper. So usually when we're describing a run of newspapers, we just put the date and the title. And that can be really difficult for someone to search for in an aggregated context. So thinking about how you're writing the description of the object and being as useful as possible and as usable for the user as possible. And it should only apply to the object being described. Again, you want to avoid using blanket descriptions for things because, again, that's going to provide some challenges for the user during their search. So don't describe the collection in this field. You should be describing the object in question. Because again, it's going to be presented in a context with objects from lots of other institutions. And not everything in a collection is going to be exactly the same. So you want to be careful about that as well. And remember that you should avoid using abbreviations and ambiguous references because it should stand on its own outside of its local context. And the final element we're going to be talking about is right statements. So DPLA and Europeana, which is the European version of DPLA, have worked on a joint project together called rightstatements.org. And it's specifically designed for cultural heritage institutions to cover the most common copyright situations that are encountered with digital cultural heritage materials. It's a simple and flexible standard that lets the user know the copyright status of that object right away. It is different from Creative Commons, which is a license for use and reuse. So this is not the same as a Creative Commons designation where you're providing a license for someone to be able to reuse the object. It's just providing the copyright status of that object as it stands now. So it doesn't provide other legal restrictions like privacy or fair use or anything like that. It just says whether or not the object is in copyright or what the copyright evaluation of that object is. It is human and machine readable because it uses linked data and URIs to describe the statement, which allows for DPLA to provide that quick visual reference to the copyright status of that item. It also makes it useful for users who are looking for things that are in the public domain for specific projects and things like that to be able to find those objects more quickly than they would have otherwise. So the reason that this project was created is because there were so many different unique right statements being used. So for example, in a sample of 1.3 million records in DPLA, and remember there's 22 million objects in DPLA, so this is a very small sample, there were over 26,000 unique right statements. So this was a way to standardize the way that we talk about rights when it comes to this kind of material. So why are we talking about this now? And why should you be looking into this? It's soon going to be required by DPLA for harvesting, so if you don't have a right statement URI in your object, it won't be able to be collected by DPLA. It's not a requirement right now, but it will be at some point. So it is something that you want to take into consideration sooner rather than later. It provides consistent right statements for users. It's a clear framework to approach copyright for digital objects, and it provides standardization across institutions. So right now, these are the 12 right statements that are available through rightstatements.org. They're in copyright, unknown rights holder, no copyright in the United States, a European orphan work, that's probably something we're not going to use very often, contractual restrictions, no copyright with contractual restrictions, copyright undetermined, copyright with educational use permitted, no copyright but non-commercial use only, copyright not evaluated, non-commercial use permitted, no copyright with other legal restrictions, and no known copyright. Of these 12 right statements, the ones that you're most likely going to be using are these 6. They're relevant to the United States, and they're the ones that you're most likely going to encounter most often when it comes to your collections. So they do have a copyright not evaluated right statement that you can use. We would discourage the use of that because, again, that's not very useful to the user when determining how they can use that object. But it is an option that is available if when that becomes a requirement for DPLA, you haven't had the opportunity to evaluate the copyright of certain objects within your collection. So, does anyone have questions? Yeah, go ahead, Joanne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I have one question regarding the thumbnails. The thumbnails are currently not required by the DPLA, but they are required by SSDN. Is that correct?
No, the thumbnail is required by DPLA.
It is required by DPLA. Perfect. Are the thumbnails considered part of the metadata?
Yes.
So the thumbnails would be able to be downloaded bulk by API developers?
Yes.
Are there a certain size limitation that SSDN is recommending for those thumbnails?
No, not at this time. A lot of systems will automatically create a thumbnail as a derivative when you ingest an object. We're not applying limitations for that because different systems do different things with thumbnails.
Okay. So the thumbnails are then falling under a copyright status that may not be true of the object itself.
That's correct. But because it's a thumbnail and not a full resolution object, it would be a lot harder to use that in something.
It just seems like there's something, I don't know, squishy is the word for it about that. I'm just curious as to how we're applying a right statement to a tiny digital object. I know it's not the full digital object, it's not a high resolution object, but essentially if you're saying that a thumbnail is part of the metadata and you have to state that your metadata is openly available for all to use publicly, isn't that kind of a sticky widget?
I mean, that's a really good question. I can definitely look into that and get back to you.
I'm just curious if what they come back with in saying that, because otherwise DPLA is an aggregator, and anytime somebody wants to look at the object, they're directed to where the object resides. And I'm currently looking into a project for a faculty member here and looking into a grant for it. And on some level, maybe the DPLA would be sort of a good venue to put these objects and have them develop an API in order to manipulate those objects. And rather than them trying to develop an API for Islandora. So we were thinking sort of a workaround that situation, but I wasn't quite sure, since it's, again, they would be getting a thumbnail, whether that would be sufficient for them or whether there's a size that we would be able to put in there so that it would be workable for them if it was a large enough image. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about how the whole thumbnail works, and I'm also curious about not wanting to say that these images, whether they're tiny thumbnails or medium-sized thumbnails, are openly available with a Creative Commons license as part of metadata when they're just tiny digital objects. So I'm curious how that may play out, and if you could keep your ears and eyes open on that one, I would be interested in more information.
Yeah, and the reason it's a thumbnail instead of the full object is because they are they are an aggregator, so they don't actually host any of the collections that are available to search through their platform.
Right, but they could bulk download those thumbnails.
Yes.
Right, so they could do something with those bulk thumbnails, and they would be doing so under the idea that they are openly available with a Creative Commons license. And I'm not
Yes.
so sure that that is the same. An image is an image. I'm not sure whether the size will interfere with the copyright statement.
Yeah.
So I'm just.
Yeah, I can ask them about that for sure. And
Yeah.
I know where to reach you, so I can let you know.
Thanks so much. This is
You're
just, potential issues down the road for something we may be using this for.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And Jacqueline Wilson asked if Past Perfect has is an OAI PMH compatible program, and the answer is yes. It does have an OAI PMH endpoint. However, one of the issues that we face with Past Perfect is that not everyone who's using Past Perfect is making their objects freely available online. So since the object has to be viewable online by the public, taking into consideration the restrictions on the objects that you're hosting on Past Perfect is important. But it is OAI PMH compatible. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Nikki. Right now, the Miami Herald is not a content contributor. Right now, our content contributors are primarily hosted collections through FIU, and the newest non-hosted collection is from the Miami-Dade Public Library, and their content will be available in August in DPLA. But right now, the Miami Herald is not a contributor. DPLA does have some issues with newspapers right now, so it's not content they're actively seeking, just because it is so hard to search for them in the aggregated context without the full text search ability. So they're not discounting it for forever, because they are trying to work on solutions to remedy that so that they can start aggregating newspapers as well. But right now, it's not content that they're actively seeking because it's just not really conducive for the type of product that's available right now.
Alright, if there are no more questions, and even if there are, you're more than welcome to ask right after I close this out. Thank you, Kayla, for an informative webinar this morning. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you, everyone, for a terrific rest of your day.